Last time, we left Dr. Quinn Pelligrino trapped in an elevator with a monster, her thumb pressing the panic button on a silver key fob. You thought the therapy sessions were intense? You haven't seen anything yet. In Part 2, the court order goes up in flames. Nikolai Volkov isn't just coming to save her, he is tearing the steel doors off to claim her. The secret is out. He's not just a CEO with anger issues, he is the Alpha King, and his obsession has officially shifted to mating fever. Get ready for the brutal rescue, the deadly council trials, and the spicy truth behind the impulse control diagnosis. The doctor is out, the queen is in. The welcome. Welcome back to Linas Romantasy collection. To my loyal pack members, I'm so glad you're here for the explosive conclusion, and if you're new to the channel, welcome to your new favorite obsession. Before we dive into the wreckage, please hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. I want to see how far our pack reaches today. Drop a quick comment below and tell me what city or country you are listening from. Now, let's find out what happens when the alpha snaps. Chapter 21. The cavalry arrives on 4 wheels. Zachary slammed his shoulder against the gap in the steel doors. He didn't need a crowbar. His strength was unnatural. The metal groaned and bent like wet cardboard under his assault. His face was inches from mine, contorted into a snarl that showed too many teeth. "Open it!" he screamed, squeezing his arm through to grab me. His fingers ended in jagged, bone-white claws. I backed into the corner of the elevator, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. My hand shook as I pointed the silver key fob at the gap in the doors, aiming down the shaft. "Hey, Zachary!" I yelled, my voice cracking. "Fetch!" I held down the trunk release button. Click! From the parking garage, 1 floor below, a mechanical whirr echoed up the shaft, followed instantly by a deafening crash. Vitali had modified the hydraulics. When the trunk popped, it didn't just click open, it deployed with enough force to shatter concrete. The sound of Bridget slamming her trunk lid into the low ceiling of the parking garage boomed like a gunshot. Zachary flinched. He looked down, distracted by the noise. It was the only opening I needed. Then, the door behind him, the one leading to the corridor, didn't just open. It disintegrated. A black blur slammed into Zachary. It wasn't a man. It was a force of nature. Nikolai hit him with enough kinetic energy to crack the concrete wall. Zachary didn't just fall. He was thrown like a rag doll, sliding through the debris of the catering cart, his claws scraping uselessly against the floor. Nikolai stood in the doorway. His tuxedo jacket was gone. His shirt was shredded across the back where his muscles had expanded, straining against the fabric. His eyes were burning pools of molten silver. He didn't throw a punch. He reached out, his hand forming a claw, and grabbed Zachary by the throat. He lifted the beta off the ground, feet dangling, and slammed him against the wall again. "You touched her!" Nikolai roared, his voice a dual-tone resonance of man and beast. His canines had lengthened, sharp and lethal. "You dared to hunt in my territory!" Zachary clawed at Nikolai's arm, but his beta claws couldn't pierce the alpha's skin. I slid down the wall of the elevator, clutching the key fob to my chest. I watched as Nikolai tightened his grip. He was going to kill him. I was watching a murder. "Nikolai!" I screamed.
Chapter 22. The Command. The red haze was everything. It clouded my vision, narrowing the world down to a single point, the pulse beating in Zachary's throat. The traitor. The beta who dared to hunt what belonged to me. My wolf was screaming for blood. "Tear him apart," the beast howled. "Show the council what happens when they touch our mate." I tightened my grip on his windpipe. Zachary clawed at my wrist, his face turning a mottled purple. I could feel his life fluttering under my fingertips like a trapped bird. It would be so easy to crush it. So satisfying. "Nikolai!" The voice cut through the red haze like a shard of ice. I froze. "Quinn." I turned my head. She was standing in the open elevator, framed by the bent metal doors. Her red dress was torn at the hem. Her hair was wild. She was clutching that silver key fob like a talisman. But she wasn't looking at Zachary. She was looking at me, and she wasn't cowering. "Put him down," she said. Her voice was steady. It was the voice she used in her office, the voice that asked me to count my shoes. "He tried to kill you," I snarled, the words tearing at my throat. "He does not deserve to breathe." "I know," Quinn said, taking a step out of the elevator. She walked right into the kill zone. "But if you kill him, you prove him right. You prove you're an unstable monster who can't control his temper." She reached out and placed her hand on my arm, the arm holding Zachary up. Her skin was cool against my burning flesh. "Show them you're the king," she whispered, "not the animal." The red haze receded, just an inch. I looked at her hand on my arm. Then I looked at Zachary, who was dangling limply, his eyes rolling back in his head. She was right. If I killed him here, the council would use it to bury me. They would say the madness took me. They would separate me from her forever. I snarled in frustration, but I opened my hand. Zachary dropped to the floor like a sack of wet cement. He gasped, sucking in air, coughing violently. I stepped back, positioning myself between him and Quinn. I looked down at him with cold contempt. "You are exiled," I pronounced, my voice returning to its human timbre, though it remained deadly cold. "If I see you in my city, if I smell you near my company, or if you ever say her name again, there will be no body for your family to bury." Zachary didn't speak. He just curled into a ball, wheezing. Behind us, heavy footsteps thundered down the hall. "Volkov!" Elder Vance appeared, flanked by 4 enforcers. He stopped when he saw the scene: the broken elevator, the smashed cart, the unconscious traitor, and me standing over Quinn. Vance looked at Zachary, then at me. "He attacked her," I said simply, straightening my cuffs over my shredded shirt. "I defended my consultant and my car." Vance looked at Quinn. "Is this true?" Quinn stepped forward. She pulled the edges of her dress together. She looked Vance dead in the eye. "Mr. Swan had a psychotic break," she diagnosed calmly. "He was delusional and violent. Alpha Volkov showed remarkable restraint. I'll be writing a full psychological report on the incident." Vance stared at her. Then slowly the corner of his mouth twitched. "Restraint?" Vance scoffed, looking at the crater in the wall where Zachary's head had been. "Remarkable indeed." He signaled the enforcers. "Take the garbage out and have the tech team wipe the hotel security servers. If a single frame of this footage leaks, I will skin everyone in this room."
Chapter 23. The Fortress. The ride in the limousine was silent. The partition was up. Boris was driving us somewhere, but I knew it wasn't my apartment. I didn't argue. I didn't want to go back to my apartment. Zachary had been in the parking lot. He knew where I lived. I sat in the corner of the leather seat, shaking. Now that the adrenaline was fading, the reality of what just happened was crashing down on me. The claws, the glowing eyes, the sound of Zachary hitting the wall. I looked at Nikolai. He was sitting on the opposite bench, staring out the window. He hadn't said a word since we left the hotel. He was holding a glass of whiskey, but he wasn't drinking it. His hand was trembling. "You're shaking," I said softly. He didn't look at me. "The adrenaline dump. It is a physiological response." "Nikolai!" He turned. His eyes were gray again, but they looked haunted. "I almost killed him, Quinn. In front of you." "But you didn't," I said. "You listened to me." "I should have," he whispered darkly. "He touched you. The law says I should have taken his hand." "I like Zachary better with his hands, in jail, far away from me," I said, trying to lighten the mood. "Besides, I think Bridget did enough damage. Did you hear that crash?" A faint smile ghosted his lips. "Vitaly will be pleased. The trunk hydraulic system was designed for heavier payloads. It seems you deployed the emergency release." "The emergency what?" "Never mind." The car slowed and turned into a private underground garage. We weren't at a hotel. We were at the Apex Tower, his fortress. The car stopped. Nikolai opened the door and offered me his hand. "You are not staying at your apartment tonight," he stated. "It is not secure." "I figured," I said, taking his hand. We took the private elevator up to the penthouse. The doors opened to a space that was vast, modern, and incredibly lonely. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city. Nikolai led me to a massive, sunken living room. He sat me down on a sofa that cost more than my student loans. "I will get you ice," he said, looking at my arm. I looked down. There was a bruise forming where Zachary had grabbed me. Nikolai returned a moment later with a cloth wrapped around an ice pack. He knelt on the floor in front of me. He didn't ask. He just gently took my arm. His touch was agonizingly tender. This man, who had just punched a crater in a concrete wall, was now tending a bruise with the precision of a surgeon. "I am sorry," he said, his voice thick. He kept his eyes on the bandage he was applying. "I dragged you into this. I thought I could use the gala to hide you. I was arrogant." "You were protecting me," I said. "I failed." He looked up, his eyes burning. "You were attacked. You had to save yourself." "I had a panic button," I reminded him, holding up the fob. "And I had you. You came for me, Nikolai. You tore a door off its hinges." He stopped. He dropped the ice pack. He took my hand in both of his. "I will always come for you," he vowed. "There is no door I will not tear down, no wall I will not break." He leaned forward, pressing his forehead against my knuckles. It was a gesture of submission, of devotion. My heart did a traitorous flip. "Nikolai," I whispered, "what are we doing?" He looked up, his face inches from mine. "I am tired of pretending I am just a patient," he growled softly. And then, before I could cite a textbook definition of transference, he kissed me.
Chapter 24. The Alpha in the Kitchen. The sun was rising over the city, turning the steel skyline of New York into jagged silhouettes of gold and gray. I hadn't slept. I stood in the kitchen of my penthouse staring at the coffee machine as if it held the secrets to the universe. My hands were gripping the granite countertop. I had kissed her. I had broken every rule in the Masquerade Handbook, violated at least 3 ethical codes, and potentially started a war with the High Council. And I would do it again. I glanced toward the hallway. Quinn was sleeping in the guest suite. I had carried her there after she fell asleep on the sofa, exhausted by the adrenaline crash. I heard the soft pad of footsteps on the hardwood floor. My wolf pricked his ears. Her heartbeat was steady, but faster than her resting rate. She was awake. She was nervous. I turned around. Quinn stood in the doorway of the kitchen. She was wearing one of my spare t-shirts, a black one that hung to her knees, and nothing else. Her hair was a chaotic halo of curls. She looked sleepy, soft, and utterly mine. "Good morning," she mumbled. "Good morning," I said. My voice was rougher than I intended. She looked around the kitchen. "So, I wasn't dreaming. I'm really in a billionaire's penthouse." "You are in a fortress," I corrected, pouring a mug of coffee. I slid it across the island toward her. "Black, 2 sugars, correct?" "You remembered." "I remember everything about you, Quinn." She took the mug, wrapping her small hands around the ceramic, but she didn't drink. She set it down on the granite counter with a deliberate clink. "Nikolai," she started. Her heart rate spiked, thump, thump, but her voice was steady. "We need to clear the air. Before we talk about feelings, we need to talk about biology." I went still. My wolf pricked his ears, sensing a trap. "Biology?" "Last night," she said, counting off on her fingers, "you tore a steel door off its hinges. Zachary had claws, actual anatomical claws. Your eyes were glowing silver, and my car was modified by a team that works faster than humanly possible." She looked me dead in the eye. There was fear there, yes, but it was buried under a layer of fierce intelligence. "You aren't just a CEO with anger issues," she whispered. "And the family business isn't just acquisitions. You're a werewolf, aren't you?" Silence stretched between us. I could hear the refrigerator humming. I could hear the blood rushing in my own ears. I could lie. I could gaslight her. "Tell her," my wolf growled. "She is mate. She deserves the truth." I held her gaze. I did not blink. "The correct term is lichen," I said, my voice low and rough. "But yes, we are wolves." I waited for the scream. I waited for her to run for the elevator. Instead, she let out a long breath. I watched as the pieces clicked into place behind her hazel eyes, the growling, the raw meat smell on the council members, the way her rabbit thumped his foot in terror whenever I entered the room, prey recognizing predator. Okay, she breathed, leaning against the counter. Okay, so monsters are real, and I'm drinking coffee with the king of them. She wasn't running. Does this frighten you? I asked, the question tearing out of my throat. My hands gripped the edge of the counter so hard, the stone groaned under the pressure. She looked at me, tilting her head. Honestly? She took a sip of the coffee, her hand trembling only slightly. It makes sense. It explains why Dash hates you so much. It's a predator-prey thing. I blinked. I was prepared for terror. I was prepared for rejection. I was not prepared for her to psychoanalyze my relationship with her rabbit. It explains a lot, she repeated softly. So when you say mate, I stepped closer, invading her space, needing to be near her acceptance. I do not mean friend, I finished for her.
Chapter 25. The Rabbit in the Safe Room. The drive back to my apartment was uneventful, mostly because Nikolai had insisted we take an armored SUV that looked like it belonged in a presidential motorcade. 2 enforcers followed in a sedan behind us. Is the security detail really necessary? I asked, watching the familiar streets of my neighborhood roll by. I'm just picking up some sweaters and a bunny. Zachary is gone, but his sympathizers remain, Nikolai said, his eyes scanning the street. You are vulnerable during the transition. We pulled up to my building. I felt a pang of sadness. I had lived here for 4 years. I'll be quick, I said. We will be quick, Nikolai corrected. He got out with me, his presence immediately making the sidewalk feel smaller. We walked up the 3 flights of stairs. I unlocked my door, and the smell of home hit me. Lavender, dust, and hay. Dash? I called out. There was an angry thump from the corner. Dash was sitting in his hutch, glaring. He had kicked most of his bedding out onto the floor in protest of my absence. I know, I'm sorry, I cooed, walking over to him. I was detained by a wolf king. Do not humanize the rodent, Nikolai said, standing in the doorway. He looked uncomfortable, like a giant in a dollhouse. Grab your essentials, clothes, documents, the animal. I grabbed a suitcase and started throwing things in. Jeans, my favorite oversized sweaters, my laptop, the framed photo of my parents. Nikolai, can you get the carrier from the top of the closet? I asked, pointing. Nikolai reached up and grabbed the plastic crate effortlessly. He set it on the floor. How do we transport it? He asked, eyeing Dash with suspicion. Him, I corrected. We pick him up and put him in. I will not touch it. It bit me. He's 5 pounds of fluff, Nikolai. You tore a steel door off its hinges last night. The door did not have incisors. I rolled my eyes and scooped Dash up. He struggled for a second, then settled into my arms, burying his nose in my sweater. See? I said, turning to Nikolai. He's fine. Then Dash saw Nikolai. The rabbit went rigid, his ears flattened. He let out a low, buzzing squeak, a sound I didn't even know rabbits could make, and lunged. Not away from Nikolai, but at him. I barely held on to him as he thrashed, his back feet scrambling for purchase. He smells the predator, Nikolai growled, his eyes flashing silver for a split second. Put him in the box, Quinn. Before I forget he is a pet, and treat him like a snack. I shoved Dash into the carrier and locked the door. Dash thumped his foot loudly against the plastic, staring at Nikolai with pure hate. Great start, I sighed. My 2 favorite men, and you already want to kill each other. Nikolai picked up the carrier, holding it at arm's length. He is not a man. He is a prey drive trigger with ears. Let's go. As we walked out, I took one last look at my apartment. My plants, my trumpet-playing neighbor, my normal life. I locked the door. I had a feeling I wouldn't be coming back for a long time.
Chapter 26. The Summons. 10 minutes later, Quinn and I stood in the living room of the penthouse. She was wearing the clothes she had arrived in, the torn red dress, because her suitcases were still in the foyer. She looked like a warrior queen who had survived a battle, her hair wild and her chin held high. The elevator chimed. "VolkOS alert," the AI voice announced smoothly. "Elder Martha has arrived. Clearance level Alpha." I stiffened. Quinn sensed the shift in my posture and stepped closer to me, not away. The doors slid open. It wasn't a courier. It was Elder Martha. The old woman walked in, looking like a grandmother who baked cookies, wearing a floral dress and a cardigan. But I knew better. She smelled of ozone, dried blood, and absolute judgment. She was the oldest living wolf in the Eastern Pack, and she had survived 3 alpha regimes. "Nikolai," Martha nodded, her eyes sharp as flint. She looked at Quinn. "Doctor." "Elder Martha," I said, stepping slightly in front of Quinn to shield her. "To what do I owe the pleasure? I thought I made my statement regarding Zachary last night." "You made a scene," Martha corrected, walking past me to sit on the Italian leather sofa without asking. "Zachary is exiled. Good riddance. He was weak and relied on treachery rather than strength. But his accusation stands." "His accusation was the rambling of a traitor," I spat. "His accusation," Martha said calmly, placing her handbag on her lap, "was that you are compromised, that your judgment is clouded by a human. And looking at you now," she gestured to the cracked granite counter in the kitchen, visible through the open plan archway, "I see a king who is breaking his own furniture." "I am stable," I lied. "You are in love," Martha said. The word sounded like a curse, and that is worse. Quinn stepped out from behind me. "With all due respect, ma'am, love is not a pathology. It is a stabilizing factor." Nikolai's cortisol levels have actually dropped significantly since we started our sessions. Martha looked at Quinn with amusement. "You speak of hormones, child. We speak of blood. The council has convened." She reached into her purse and pulled out a scroll. A literal parchment scroll sealed with red wax. "Because you have claimed her publicly," Martha announced, her voice losing its grandmotherly warmth. "We cannot simply ignore her. We cannot kill her without challenging your authority directly, which would cause a civil war." I relaxed slightly. "Good." "However," Martha continued, her eyes gleaming, "we cannot allow a human to sit on the Alpha throne without testing her mettle. The pack will not follow a queen they believe to be prey." She handed the scroll to me. I broke the seal and read it. My blood ran cold. "This is archaic," I growled, crushing the parchment in my fist. "You cannot be serious." "What is it?" Quinn asked, trying to read over my arm. "The lunar trials," I whispered. "The what?" "A series of tests," Martha explained pleasantly, "designed 300 years ago to vet potential mates for the Alpha King. Usually they are for wolves. Hunting, combat, endurance." "She is human," I roared. "She will die." "Then she is not worthy," Martha said simply. "But since she is human, we have adapted the tests. We are not savages, Nikolai. We do not expect her to hunt a deer with her teeth." "Then what do you expect?" Quinn asked, her voice steadied despite her sense spiking with fear. Martha smiled. It was not a nice smile. 3 trials, Martha listed, holding up 3 withered fingers. 1 of mind, 1 of loyalty, and 1 of courage. You have 1 week. If she passes, the council accepts her as your queen. The masquerade is amended for her. "And if she fails?" I asked, my voice low and dangerous. Martha stood up. "If she fails, she is stripped of your protection. Her memory of the pack and of you is wiped. And she is returned to the human world, never to see you again." Silence descended on the room. Memory wipe. They would take her mind. They would take us away from her. "No," I said. "I refuse." "Then you abdicate," Martha said. "You lose the company. You lose the pack. You become a rogue, and she... Well, rogues have a hard time protecting their pets from the dangers of the dark." I growled, a low rumbling sound that shook the windows. "I'll do it," Quinn said. I spun around. "Quinn, no!" She looked at me. Her face was pale, but her eyes were hazel steel. "Mind, loyalty, courage?" She looked at Martha. "I have a PhD. I'm loyal to my patients. And I just fought a guy with claws in an elevator. I'll take your test. Chapter 27. The War Room. The penthouse was silent, save for the scratching sound of Quinn's pen on paper. It was late Sunday evening. We had spent the entire day turning my study into a war room. Stacks of leather-bound books, pack laws, history of the council, treaties of the 19th century were piled high on the mahogany desk. Okay, Quinn said, pushing her glasses up her nose. She had changed into one of my hoodies, which swallowed her frame. So, let me get this straight. In 1842, the council ruled that a challenge of blood could only be issued if the moon was waxing? Correct, I said, pacing behind her. If the moon is waning, the challenge is invalid because the goddess is retreating. Right, waxing, got it. She scribbled furiously. And the penalty for breaking a truce on neutral ground? Decapitation, I said. Of course it is, she sighed, rubbing her temples. Nikolai, this is insane. There are thousands of laws. I can't memorize 3 centuries of werewolf jurisprudence in 12 hours. You must, I said, the panic rising in my chest again. I stopped pacing and looked at her. She looked exhausted. She was trying so hard, fighting a battle she didn't understand for a man who was arguably a monster. I walked over and placed my hands on her shoulders. The tension in her muscles was palpable. The trial of mind is rarely a written test, I told her softly. Martha is old-fashioned, but she is devious. She will not ask you for dates and names. She will ask you to solve a problem, a moral dilemma. She wants to see if you think like a queen. I don't think like a queen, Quinn admitted, leaning back against me. I think like a therapist. I look for compromise. I look for the underlying emotion. In your world, everything seems to be solved by biting. That is your strength, I said. Wolf law is binary, black and white, live or die. You see the gray. That is why they fear you. They fear me because I'm human. They fear you because you change me, I whispered, and change terrifies them. I leaned down and kissed the top of her head. The scent of her shampoo, honey and vanilla, soothed the restless beast inside me. What if I fail? She asked, her voice small. You will not. But if I do? The memory wipe. She turned her chair around to face me. Nikolai, if they wipe my memory, will I forget you? The thought made my blood run cold. If she failed, they would take her mind. She would wake up in her apartment thinking the last month was a dream. She would go back to her life, and I would have to watch her from the shadows, knowing she was mine, but unable to touch her. I will not let them take you, I vowed, gripping the arms of her chair. If you fail, we run. I have safe houses in Europe, in Asia. We will disappear. And you'd give up being king? I would give up breathing if it meant keeping you. She looked at me, her eyes shining with tears. She reached up and touched my face. Then I better pass, she said fiercely, because I don't want to run. I want to stay. I want to fight. She turned back to the desk and grabbed the next book. Okay, she said, tell me about the Treaty of 1912, and don't skip the gory parts. I smiled. That was my mate. Chapter 28, The First Trial. The council chamber was not what Quinn expected. She had whispered to me in the car that she expected a dungeon or a cave. Instead, it was a boardroom. Located on the top floor of a nondescript financial building in Midtown, the room was all glass and polished wood. But the atmosphere was ancient. The air was thick with the scent of old predators. 5 elders sat at a long, curved table. Elder Vance was there, looking smug and smelling of stale cigars. Elder Martha sat in the center. I stood behind Quinn. I wasn't allowed to speak. If I interfered, she failed automatically. But my presence was a heavy, warm weight at her back. I could feel her anxiety radiating off her in waves. But she stood tall. She was wearing a black pantsuit she had salvaged from her apartment. It looked like armor. Dr. Pelligrino, Elder Martha began, her voice dry as dust. Welcome to the trial of mind. Thank you, Quinn said. The rules are simple, Martha said. We will present you with a scenario. You must adjudicate. You must deliver a verdict that aligns with the safety and preservation of the pack. I'm ready, Quinn said. Martha pressed a button on the table. A screen descended from the ceiling. Observe. A video began to play. It was grainy security footage from what looked like an industrial warehouse. In the video, 2 young men, wolves judging by their fluid, predatory movement, were fighting. It was brutal. Claws, teeth, blood. They were partially shifted, their faces distorted into muzzles. Then a third person entered the frame, a human security guard. He saw the fight. He panicked and pulled a gun. One of the wolves turned and slashed the guard across the chest. The guard fell, bleeding out. The wolves fled the scene. The video froze on the image of the bleeding guard. The scenario, Martha narrated. 2 juvenile wolves, unsanctioned, broke the masquerade. They were seen by a human. They attacked a human. The human survives, but he has seen the transformation. She leaned forward, her eyes locking onto Quinn. You are the queen. The enforcers have caught the juveniles. They are from a high-ranking bloodline. The human is in the hospital, telling tales of monsters. What is your command? Vance interrupted, leaning forward eagerly. Do you kill the human to silence him? Do you kill the juveniles for their crime? Or do you attempt a cover-up and risk exposure? I tensed. It was a trap. If she said kill the human, she lost her humanity and proved she was a monster. If she said kill the wolves, she lost the pack and proved she didn't care about our children. If she said cover-up, she showed weakness. In the old ways, the answer was usually death, a clean sweep. Quinn stared at the screen. She didn't speak immediately. She tapped her finger against her leg. I need more information, she said. Vance frowned. There is no more information, Judge. No, Quinn said firmly. Behavior has a root cause. Why were they fighting? Juveniles don't just brawl in warehouses for fun. Was it territory? A female? Or, she stepped closer to the screen, were they protecting something? She pointed to the corner of the frozen video. Zoom in, Sector 4. Martha raised an eyebrow, but she tapped a command. The screen zoomed.
Chapter 29. The Verdict. The pixelated image expanded. It wasn't a crate in the corner. It was a pup. A tiny, unshifted wolf pup cowering in the shadows behind a pallet. They weren't brawling, I said, turning to the council. They were defending a pup. The security guard likely stumbled upon the den, and the juveniles reacted on instinct to protect the vulnerable. I looked at Martha. My verdict is this. The juveniles are not to be executed. They acted on biology to protect the future of the pack. That is the core of pack law, isn't it? Preservation? Martha remained impassive. And the human? He knows. He is talking. The human is in shock, I said, my voice gaining confidence. Trauma alters memory. You don't need to kill him. You need to discredit him. Or better yet, I smiled. It was the smile I used when a patient finally had a breakthrough. You buy the hospital, I said. You transfer him to a private psychiatric facility. I have exclusive admitting privileges at St. John's for discrete cases. And you treat him for hallucinations caused by a gas leak or chemical exposure in the warehouse. You pay him a massive settlement. You give him excellent care. You want us to pay him? Vance scoffed. I want you to neutralize the threat without creating a body, I countered. Bodies create investigations. Investigations destroy the pack. My solution creates a loyal patient and a silent witness. The juveniles do community service to learn control. The human lives. The masquerade holds. I crossed my arms. That is my verdict. Silence filled the room. I held my breath. Behind me, I heard Nikolai let out a tiny, almost inaudible exhale. Vance looked furious. You suggest bribery and gaslighting? I suggest strategy, I corrected. Brute force is easy, Mr. Vance. Cleaning up the mess without leaving a stain? That takes a queen. Martha looked at Vance. Then she looked at me. Slowly, she began to clap. A slow, dry sound that echoed in the glass room. The trial of mind, Martha announced, is concluded. She passed? Nikolai asked, his voice rough. She rewrote the rules, Martha said, a glint of respect in her eyes. She found the third option. That is what we require. She gestured to the door. Go, prepare for the trial of loyalty. It will not be so academic. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. My knees felt weak. Nikolai grabbed my hand, squeezing it tight. Come, he whispered. Let's get you out of here. As we walked to the elevator, I whispered back, Did I really just advocate for professional gaslighting? You saved 2 lives, Nikolai murmured, pressing a kiss to my temple. And you saved me from having to kill a security guard. You did well.
Chapter 30, The Queen of Gaslighting. The ride back to the penthouse was quiet, but it wasn't the heavy silence of the morning. It was the silence of shock. I watched Quinn from the corner of my eye. She was scrolling through her phone, checking emails as if she hadn't just outsmarted the High Council. We arrived at the Apex Tower. The security team swept the perimeter, then escorted us up to the penthouse. As soon as the elevator doors opened, a rhythmic thump, thump, thump echoed from the living room. The beast lives, I sighed. We walked in. Vitaly had been busy. A brand new multi-level rabbit mansion with glass walls was already set up in the corner of the sunken living room. Dash was currently throwing his ceramic food bowl against the glass wall of the hutch. He hates the view, Quinn interpreted, kicking off her heels. He prefers a garden view. The skyscrapers make him feel small. He is small, I pointed out. He is a ball of lint with an attitude problem. Be nice, Quinn warned, walking over to the hutch. She opened the door and pulled the white fluff ball out. She cooed at him, scratching him behind the ears. Dash immediately melted, closing his eyes in bliss. I felt a sharp spike of jealousy. It was ridiculous. It was a rabbit. But seeing her lavish affection on something else, even a rodent, made my wolf pace in circles. Put him down, I growled softly. You need to eat. You have not had a meal since yesterday. I'm fine, she said, but her stomach growled loudly, betraying her. Sit, I commanded, pointing to the sofa. I will order food. Pizza? Or something with more kale? Pizza, she groaned, sinking into the cushions with Dash still in her lap. Greasy, carb-loaded pizza. I just outsmarted a werewolf court. I deserve cheese. I ordered 5 pizzas, 2 for her, 3 for me. While we waited, I sat next to her. Dash opened one eye, saw me, and let out a low hiss. He really doesn't like you, Quinn laughed. The feeling is mutual. I leaned back, stretching my arm along the sofa behind her. Quinn, Trial 1 is done. But Trial 2, loyalty. It will not be an intellectual exercise. Loyalty tests usually involve temptation. Quinn looked at me, her hazel eyes serious. Temptation to do what? Betray you? Yes. They will offer you things, money, safety. Perhaps they will offer to wipe your memory voluntarily so you can go back to your normal life without pain. I tightened my hand on her shoulder. They will try to make you leave me. Quinn put Dash down on the cushion. She turned her body toward me, placing her hands on my chest. Nikolai, she said firmly, look at me. I looked. I just moved my rabbit into a penthouse. I am wearing a suit I stole from my own closet while surrounded by bodyguards. I am terrified of your grandmother figure, but I am not going anywhere. She leaned up and kissed me. It was soft, tasting of coffee and promise. They can offer me the moon, she whispered against my lips, but I prefer the wolf. My heart hammered against my ribs. I pulled her closer, deepening the kiss, forgetting about the rabbit, the council, and the pizza, until a sharp pain exploded in my thigh. I roared, pulling back. Dash was attached to my expensive dress pants, his teeth sunk into my quadricep. Bad Bunny, Quinn shrieked, grabbing him. He bit me! I stared at the creature in disbelief. Again! He tasted royal blood! He's protective, Quinn argued, hugging the struggling rabbit. He is an assassin! I stood up, rubbing the phantom pain in my thigh where the bruise had already healed. If he does it again, Quinn, I swear, he becomes slippers.
Chapter 31. The Invitation. Tuesday morning arrived with a headache and a sense of impending doom. I was in the kitchen, trying to figure out how to operate Nikolai's coffee machine, which looked like it could launch nuclear missiles, when the elevator chimed. It wasn't a courier this time. It was a single black envelope slid under the door. Nikolai was already in the living room, doing one-armed push-ups with a casual intensity that was frankly distracting. He leaped up when he saw the envelope, his movement a blur of predatory speed. "Do not touch it," he ordered. He walked over, sniffed it, and then picked it up. "It is safe. Scented with lavender and motor oil?" He frowned. He broke the seal and pulled out a card. "Well?" I asked, clutching my empty mug. "What is the trial of loyalty? Do I have to swear a blood oath? Walk across hot coals?" Nikolai read the card. His face darkened. His jaw clenched so hard I thought he might crack a tooth. "Worse," he growled. "You have to have dinner." "Dinner?" I blinked. "That sounds lovely. Who are we eating with?" He handed me the card. Trial of loyalty. Objective: secure the alliance. Target: Alpha Rocco Santini, Iron River Pack. Location: the Golden Grotto, 8 p.m. Condition: the candidate must negotiate a peace treaty regarding the southern docks. Alpha Volkov may attend as a witness, but he may not speak, signal, or intervene. If he does, the candidate fails. I lowered the card. Rocco? The guy who wears purple tracksuits and bites my tires? He is the one, Nikolai spat. The Iron River Pack controls the docks. We have been in a cold war for years. The council wants you to fix a decade of hostility in one meal. And if I can't? Then war breaks out, and you fail the trial. And I can't ask you for help, I noted the condition. You have to sit there and be quiet. That, Nikolai said, pacing the room, is the true torture. Rocco is aggravating. He will insult me. He will hit on you. He will be loud. He gave me a hubcap necklace, I reminded him. He likes me, sort of. That is the problem, Nikolai roared. He wants you. The council knows this. They are sending you into the den of a rival male to see if you will leverage yourself for the pack. I looked at the card again. Secure the alliance. They want to know if I'm loyal to you, or if I'm willing to flirt with him to get what I want, I realized. Or they want to see if I can handle a rival alpha without hiding behind you. Can you? Nikolai asked, stopping his pacing. He looked genuinely worried. Rocco is a clown, but he is a dangerous clown. He has a bite force of 1,200 psi. I took a deep breath. I thought about Rocco, his insecurity, his need for validation, the gold chains, the loud suits, his impulse control issues. I can handle him, I said, a plan already forming in my mind. Rocco doesn't need a treaty, Nikolai. He needs a therapist. Nikolai groaned. Please do not psychoanalyze the rival warlord. It's the only weapon I have, I said, putting the card down. Wear something nice tonight, and bring earplugs. You're going to need them. Chapter 32. The Meatball Diplomacy. The Golden Grotto was exactly the kind of place Rocco Santini would choose. It was tacky. Red velvet wallpaper, gold statues of cherubs pissing into fountains, and the smell of garlic so strong it made my eyes water. I sat at the table, my hands folded on the white tablecloth. I was wearing my tuxedo. Quinn was wearing the black pantsuit again, her armor, but she had clipped the silver wolf key fob to her belt loop, a visible sign of her allegiance. Across from us sat Rocco. He was wearing a white suit with a red shirt open to his navel. A forest of chest hair and gold chains was visible. He was currently chewing on a toothpick. So, Rocco boomed, ignoring me completely and winking at Quinn. The doctor is in the house, and looking delicious, like a spicy meatball. I gripped the edge of the table. The wood groaned under my fingers. Do not speak, I reminded myself. If you speak, she fails. If she fails, she is wiped. Good evening, Alpha Santini, Quinn said pleasantly. She didn't flinch at the compliment. Thank you for meeting us. The council has authorized me to discuss the southern docks. The docks? Rocco waved a hand dismissively. Boring. Let's talk about you. Why are you with the Russian icicle? He doesn't appreciate you. Look at him. Rocco pointed a breadstick at me. He looks like he's at a funeral. I bet he doesn't even know how to dance. I narrowed my eyes. I had danced with her just 2 nights ago. I had spun her until she was breathless. We are here for business, Quinn steered him back gently. The skirmishes at the docks are bad for everyone. Bad for your shipping lanes. Bad for Apex dynamics. We want a truce." "A truce costs money," Rocco grinned. "Or trade." He leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. "I'll give you the docs," Rocco said softly, "if you dump him and come work for me. I need a queen, Dr. Q. My pack is chaotic. We need a woman's touch. You come to Iron River, and I'll sign whatever you want." It was the test, the trial of loyalty. He was offering her power, status, a pack that would worship her instead of a council that judged her. And he was offering it without the threat of death or memory wipes. I stopped breathing. I stared at Quinn. Quinn looked at Rocco. She picked up her wine glass, swirled the red liquid, and took a sip. "That is a generous offer, Rocco," she said. My heart stopped. "But," she continued, setting the glass down, "I think you're confusing a queen with a mother." Rocco blinked. "Excuse me?" "You don't want a partner," Quinn said, her voice shifting into her clinical tone. "You want someone to organize your chaos, to manage your impulses, to stop you from biting tires. You're looking for a caretaker, Rocco, and that stems from a deep-seated insecurity about your own leadership capabilities." Rocco's mouth dropped open. The breadstick fell from his hand. "You compensate with loud clothes and gold chains," Quinn went on, relentless. "You challenge Nikolai not because you want his territory, but because you want his validation. You want to be seen as an equal." Rocco looked like he was about to explode. His face turned a deep shade of plum. "I do not!" he shouted, slamming his fist on the table. "I am a big dog." "Then prove it," Quinn challenged. "Big dogs don't need to steal staff from other packs. Big dogs make deals that benefit their people. Sign the treaty, Rocco. Show the council you're mature enough to handle the docs without fighting. That's how you get respect." She slid the paper across the table. "Sign it," she said softly, "and I'll give you a referral to a great therapist who specializes in executive dysfunction. She's out of network, but she's good." Rocco stared at the paper. He stared at me. He stared at Quinn. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. The waiters had fled. Slowly, Rocco picked up a pen. "You're terrifying," Rocco whispered to Quinn. "You're scarier than him." "I know," Quinn smiled. Rocco signed the paper. He shoved it back at her. "Get out of here," he grumbled, shoving a meatball into his mouth. "Before I change my mind." Quinn took the paper. She stood up. "Pleasure doing business, Alpha." She turned to me. "Ready to go, darling?" I stood up. I didn't say a word. I just offered her my arm. But as we walked out, I looked back at Rocco. He was staring at his reflection in a spoon, looking deeply existential. We stepped out into the cool night air. "You," I said, finally allowed to speak, "are magnificent." "I know," Quinn said, waving the treaty. "Trial 2, passed. Now, can we go home? My feet are killing me, and I think Dash is lonely." Chapter 33. The Waiting Game. Wednesday was worse than the fighting. Silence filled the penthouse. It was a heavy, suffocating silence that pressed against my eardrums. Quinn was sitting on the floor by the window, folding laundry. She was methodically pairing socks, her colorful, ridiculous socks with patterns of avocados and cats, while Dash, the rabbit, supervised from his hutch. "You are calm," I said, pacing the length of the living room for the 100th time. "I'm organizing," Quinn corrected, not looking up. "It's a coping mechanism. When the world is out of control, control the laundry." I stopped pacing and looked at her. She looked small, fragile. The council had not sent the instructions for the 3rd trial yet. They were making us wait. It was a psychological tactic designed to breed anxiety, and it was working. "Trial of courage," I muttered. "Usually this involves a physical hunt. They release a feral boar or a rogue wolf, and the candidate must kill it." Quinn paused, holding a sock with a taco on it. "Well, I don't own a spear, Nikolai, and my karate yellow belt from 3rd grade is a little rusty." "It is not a joke, Quinn." I knelt beside her, grabbing her hands. The socks fell to the floor. If they put you in a cage with a beast, I will not stand by. I will break the rules. I will tear the council apart before I let them hurt you. And then you'll be exiled, she said softly, and we'll be running forever. Better to run than to bury you. She freed one hand and cupped my cheek. Her touch was cool, grounding. Nikolai, look at me. I survived Zachary in an elevator. I survived Rocco in a restaurant. I can survive this. Before I could argue, the elevator chimed. Volk OS alert, the AI announced. Vehicle delivery in the main foyer. Vehicle? I frowned. We went down to the garage. Vitaly was standing there, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. Behind him sat Bridget. The Peugeot was back. After Quinn had crashed the trunk into the garage ceiling during the attack, the car had been a wreck. But now, she looked different. The dent in the bumper was gone. The red paint was polished to a mirror shine. But there was something heavier about her stance. The tires were thicker. The exhaust pipe looked wider. She is fixed, Vitaly grunted, patting the hood. We reinforced the hydraulic ram, added a roll cage, and I took the liberty of installing a nitrous oxide booster in the glove box. Just in case. Nitrous? Quinn blinked. Vitaly, I drive to a clinic, not a drag strip. It is better to have and not need, Vitaly shrugged. He handed her the keys. Also, there is a package on the driver's seat. It came this morning. My blood went cold. I walked to the car and opened the door. Resting on the vintage leather seat was a single white envelope sealed with the council's wax crest. I ripped it open. Trial of Courage. Objective, the Walk of the Blind. Location, Blackwood Preserve, Sector 7. Time, midnight. Condition, the candidate enters alone. No weapons, no technology, no alpha. Blackwood, I whispered. It was a dense forest preserve upstate, owned by the pack. It was where we released young wolves for their first shift. It was wild, dark, and full of ancient magic. Midnight, Quinn read over my shoulder. She sounded steady, but I could smell the spike of adrenaline in her scent. Okay, a midnight stroll in the woods. I can do that. It is not a stroll, I warned her. The forest is alive, and tonight, they will release the Guardian. The Guardian? A spectral wolf, I explained grimly. An illusion made of fear and shadow. It cannot hurt you physically, but if you run from it, if your heart gives out, you fail. Quinn took the keys from my hand. She squeezed them tight. Then I guess I better not run. Chapter 34. The Blackwood. The forest smelled of pine needles and impending death. We stood at the edge of the tree line. The moon was full, casting long, skeletal shadows across the snow-dusted ground. It was freezing, but I wasn't shivering from the cold. Elder Martha stood by a heavy iron gate, holding a lantern. Elder Vance was there too, looking eager, like he was hoping for a show. Nikolai was standing next to me. He was vibrating with tension. His hand was gripping my shoulder so hard it bruised, but I didn't tell him to stop. I needed the anchor. The rules are absolute, Martha intoned, her voice carrying in the silent night. You must walk the path to the center of the clearing. There, you will find the moonstone. Retrieve it. Bring it back to the gate. And the Guardian? Nikolai demanded. The Guardian will test her resolve, Martha said simply. If she is worthy to stand beside the Alpha, she will not fear the shadow. She turned to me. You have 1 hour, Doctor. After that, the gate closes. I looked at the dark path winding into the trees. It looked like the opening scene of every horror movie I had ever yelled at the screen about. Don't go in there! Quinn, Nikolai whispered. He pulled me close, pressing his forehead against mine. Listen to me. Whatever you see, it is not real. It is a manifestation of your fear. Do not engage it. Do not fight it. Just walk. Walk. Grab rock. Walk back, I recited. Got it. I will be right here, he promised. If you scream, I am coming in, Laws be damned. I won't scream, I lied. I pulled away from him. I reached into my pocket and handed him my phone and the car keys. No technology, I whispered. Hold these. He took them, his hand brushing mine. I will be right here. Open the gate, I said. Martha unlocked the iron padlock. The gate creaked open with a groan. I stepped through. The moment I crossed the threshold, the silence deepened. The sounds of the highway, the wind, even Nikolai's breathing. It all vanished. I was alone. I started walking. The path was narrow, lined with towering oaks that seemed to lean in, watching me. Twigs snapped under my boots. Snap. Snap. For the first 10 minutes, nothing happened. It was just a creepy walk in the woods. Then, the fog rolled in. It didn't drift. It surged, rising from the ground like white smoke. It swirled around my ankles, then my waist. It smelled like sulfur and old blood. It's not real, I told myself. Cognitive restructuring. It's just water vapor. A low growl vibrated through the ground. I froze. To my left, 2 yellow eyes appeared in the fog. They were floating about 7 feet off the ground. Wolves aren't 7 feet tall, my brain argued. Then, 2 more eyes appeared to my right. Red ones. And then, a voice whispered from the darkness. It sounded like Zachary. You ruin everything! I flinched. Another voice joined in, my mother's voice. You're not strong enough, Quinn. You're just a girl. Then Nikolai's voice, distorted and cold. You are a weakness. I never loved you. Tears pricked my eyes. It wasn't a physical monster. It was a psychological one. The guardian didn't bite flesh. It bit insecurities. Shut up, I whispered, closing my eyes for a second. Your auditory hallucinations. Your stress responses. I kept walking. The voices got louder. Screaming. Crying. The sound of Dash squealing in pain. I grit my teeth and walked faster. Focus on the goal. Find the stone. I broke through the tree line into a small, circular clearing. In the center, resting on a tree stump, was a smooth, round stone that glowed with a faint white light. The moonstone. Easy, I panted. Just grab it. I took a step forward. The shadows on the other side of the clearing coalesced. They swirled and thickened, forming a shape. A massive, hulking wolf stepped out of the darkness. It was made of smoke and obsidian. It was huge, bigger than Nikolai. Its teeth were like daggers of ice. It stood between me and the stone. It threw back its head and roared. The sound hit me like a physical wave, knocking the wind out of my lungs. It wasn't an illusion. I could feel the heat radiating from it. I looked back at the path. I could run. I could make it back to the gate. But if I ran, I lost Nikolai. I looked at the stone. I looked at the monster. I took a step forward. Chapter 35. The Eye of the Storm. The shadow wolf snarled, crouching low. It looked ready to pounce. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might crack a rib. Every instinct in my body screamed, "Flee! Predator! Death!" But I was a psychologist, and I knew something about fear. Aggression was rarely just aggression. Usually, it was defense. "You're big," I said aloud. My voice shook, but I kept talking. "You're very scary. Good job." The shadow wolf paused. It cocked its massive head, confused. It expected me to scream. It expected me to run. "I need that stone," I told it, taking another step. The wolf snapped its jaws. Clack! It lunged forward a foot, a mock charge designed to make me flinch. I didn't flinch. I planted my feet. "I'm not leaving without it," I said firmly. "So you can eat me or you can move, but I'm not running." I looked into its eyes. They were swirling vortices of black smoke. But deep down, was there a consciousness there? "Nikolai said you're an illusion," I said, taking another step. I was 5 feet away now. "But you feel real. You feel angry." The wolf growled low in its throat. Are you guarding it because you have to? I asked softly. Or because you're trapped here too? The growl faltered. I reached out my hand, not toward the stone, but toward the wolf. I'm not going to hurt you, I whispered. The shadow wolf stared at my hand. It sniffed. The smoke of its snout brushed my fingers. It was freezing cold, like touching liquid nitrogen. For a second, the red eyes flickered. The smoke seemed to thin. I didn't wait. I stepped past the wolf, my shoulder brushing against its flank. I walked to the stump. I picked up the moonstone. It was warm against my skin. I turned around. The shadow wolf was watching me. It wasn't snarling anymore. It looked sad. Goodbye, I whispered. I turned and walked back toward the trees. I didn't run. I walked with the stone clutched to my chest. The voices in the fog started up again, screaming, accusing, but I tuned them out. I had faced the big bad wolf. A few mean voices were nothing. I saw the gate ahead. Nikolai was gripping the bars, his face a mask of torture. When he saw me emerge from the fog, alive and holding the stone, he let out a sound that was half sob, half roar. I walked up to the gate. Did I pass? I asked Elder Martha, holding up the glowing rock. Martha looked at me. Then she looked past me, into the darkness where the shadow wolf had been. She looked shaken. The guardian did not attack? She whispered. We came to an understanding, I said. He's just doing his job. Martha unlocked the gate. I stepped through. Nikolai didn't wait for permission. He grabbed me, pulling me into his chest so hard my feet left the ground. He buried his face in my neck, breathing in my scent, shaking violently. You are alive, he rasped. You are alive! I'm okay, I soothed him, patting his back. I just had a therapy session with a smoke monster. It was enlightening. Elder Vance stepped forward. He looked furious that I wasn't dead. She retrieved the stone, Vance spat. Technically. She passed, Martha declared, her voice ringing out. The trial of courage is concluded. Dr. Quinn Pelligrino has faced the darkness and returned. She looked at me with a new expression. Respect. The council accepts you, Martha said formally. You are the Alpha's mate, the queen of the Eastern Pack. I looked at Nikolai. He pulled back slightly, his gray eyes shining with pride and love. Queen, he whispered. Does the queen get to go home and sleep for a week? I asked. Nikolai laughed. He kissed my forehead. Yes, he said. Let's go home.
Chapter 36. Nitrous and Kneading. POV, Nikolai Volkov. The forest was behind us. The council was behind us. The nightmare was over. We walked toward the parking lot of the Blackwood Preserve, the gravel crunching under our feet. I had my arm around Quinn, holding her so tight I was surprised she could breathe. I refused to let go. I felt like if I loosened my grip, the fog might come back and take her. You are shaking, Quinn noted, leaning her head against my shoulder. She was still clutching the moonstone, its warm light pulsing against her chest. I am vibrating with suppressed rage, I corrected, my voice tight. I spent an hour watching you walk into a haunted forest while standing next to Vance. It took every ounce of self-control not to throw him into the trees as a distraction. Quinn laughed. It was a tired, ragged sound, but it was the most beautiful thing I had ever heard. Well, I'm fine, she said, except I'm freezing and I really want a cheeseburger. We reached the car. Bridget, my driver Boris, had brought the Peugeot up from the city, following Vitaly's instructions. The little red convertible looked menacing in the moonlight. It sat lower to the ground now, its new tires wide and aggressive. I'll drive, Quinn said, holding out her hand. Nikolai pulled my keys from his pocket and dropped them into my palm. You just fought a shadow monster. Let me drive. I need to decompress, she insisted, her eyes flashing with lingering adrenaline. Driving calms me. Besides, I want to see what Vitaly did to my suspension. I sighed, but I handed her the keys. I was too relieved to argue. We climbed in. The engine roared to life with a deep, throaty rumble that sounded more like a muscle car than a French antique. Quinn pulled out onto the empty highway. The road stretched out before us, a ribbon of black asphalt under the stars. "She handles well," Quinn murmured, testing the steering. Vitali really tightened the chassis. I leaned my head back against the seat, closing my eyes. Vitali is a genius, a mad genius, but a genius. "What's this button?" Quinn asked. My eyes snapped open. On the dashboard, right next to the hazard lights, Vitali had installed a bright red toggle switch protected by a plastic safety cover. It was labeled in Russian, Uskoritel, accelerator. "Quinn, do not touch that," I warned. "That is the Nitrous." "Nitrous?" She looked at me, grinning. "Like in the movies?" "Like in a rocket," I corrected. Vitali said it was for evasive maneuvers only. It dumps liquid oxygen into the intake manifold. "Well," Quinn said, flipping the plastic cover open and squinting at the Cyrillic letters. "I don't read Russian, but red usually means go fast, right?" "Quinn, no, that is raw chemical injection. I'm technically escaping a forest of trauma. Evasive maneuvers engaged." She flipped the switch. Whoosh! It felt like God kicked the back of the car. My head slammed into the headrest. The world outside the window turned into a blur of streaky stars. The engine didn't roar. It screamed. The G-force pressed me into the leather seat so hard I couldn't breathe. "Oh my God!" Quinn shrieked, gripping the wheel with white knuckles. She wasn't scared. She was laughing. "Nikolai, we're flying!" "Brake!" I yelled, though my voice was lost in the sound of the wind tore past us, biting and freezing. But the car's heater was blasting hot air against my legs, creating a cocoon of warmth in the chaos. "I can't. It's too fun." We tore down the highway at a speed that would have legally classified the Peugeot as a low-flying aircraft. For 10 seconds, we were bulletproof. We were faster than the council, faster than the shadows, faster than the fear. Finally, the boost tapered off. Quinn eased off the gas, and the car settled back into a normal, law-abiding speed. She looked over at me. Her hair was a mess. Her eyes were bright and alive. She looked wild. "Okay," she breathed, her chest heaving. "That was better than therapy." I stared at her. My heart was pounding, my adrenaline was spiked, and I was absolutely, irrevocably in love with her. "You are a maniac," I said affectionately. "Remind me to fire Vitali." "Don't you dare," she smiled. "Now, let's go get that cheeseburger. The queen is hungry." I looked at her lips. I looked at the pulse fluttering in her neck. The adrenaline in the car hadn't just cleared the fear, it had ignited something else. A primal, starving need that had nothing to do with food. "We are not getting cheeseburgers," I rasped. "We aren't?" "No." I reached over and placed my hand on her thigh, gripping hard. "Drive to the tower, now!" Quinn looked at me and her breath hitched. She saw the hunger in my eyes. She pressed the accelerator, not for speed this time, but for home.
Chapter 37, The First Claim. POV, Quinn Pelligrino. We screeched into the underground garage of the Apex Tower minutes later. Nikolai killed the engine before the wheels even stopped rolling. The silence of the garage was deafening after the roar of the highway. He unbuckled my seatbelt and turned to me. The air between us was thick with the scent of ozone, burnt rubber, and arousal. "Upstairs," he commanded. "Now!" He didn't wait for me to answer. He got out, ripped my door open, and hauled me out of the car. He didn't put me down. He carried me to the elevator, his stride long and purposeful. The ride up was a blur of hands and heat. By the time the doors opened into the penthouse, Nikolai's shirt was ruined, buttons scattered on the floor like hail. He carried me straight to the master suite. He didn't bother with the lights. The city glow from the floor-to-ceiling windows cast long, blue shadows across the massive bed. He set me down on the edge of the mattress, stepping back just enough to look at me. His eyes were glowing. Not a trick of the light this time. They were two burning pools of molten silver. The alpha was fully surfaced. "You have no idea," he growled, his voice a distorted rumble that vibrated in my bones. "How long I have burned for this." Show me, I whispered. I stood up and pushed the ruined shirt off his shoulders. My hands traced the hard lines of his chest, the scars from old battles, the heavy thrum of his heart beating against my palms. He looked like a god of war, and he was looking at me like I was the only victory that mattered. He made a sound deep in his throat, half growl, half prayer, and pulled me against him. His skin was scorching hot. Mine, he murmured, burying his face in the crook of my neck. He inhaled deeply, taking in my scent. You smell like power, Quinn. You smell like my queen. His lips grazed the sensitive skin of my throat, his teeth scraping lightly over my pulse point. A jolt of electricity shot down my spine, making my knees weak. Nikolai, I gasped, clinging to his shoulders to stay upright. I have you, he vowed. I will always catch you. He lowered me onto the cool sheets. He moved over me, a wall of muscle and heat, shielding me from the world. There was no room for therapy here, no room for analysis. There was only the raw, primal need to be one. Look at me, he commanded. I looked into those glowing silver eyes. I saw the beast, and I saw the man, and I loved them both. I claim you, he whispered, interlacing his fingers with mine, pinning my hands to the mattress. Body and soul, in this life and the next. I'm yours, I cried out. Claim me, Nikolai. He closed the distance. The world narrowed down to sensation, the friction of skin against skin, the heavy, ragged rhythm of our breathing, the feeling of being completely and utterly consumed by him. It was fierce and wild, a storm finally breaking after weeks of pressure. But underneath the passion, there was a profound, aching tenderness. He moved with a possessive grace, worshipping every inch of me, making sure I knew exactly who I belonged to. When the peak finally came, it shattered us both. It was a white-hot flash that left me trembling, clinging to him as the only solid thing in a spinning universe. He roared my name, burying his face in my neck as he followed me over the edge, marking me as his in the most primal way possible. As the wave subsided, he collapsed against me, heavy and sated. He wrapped his arms around me like iron bands, pulling me into the protective curve of his body. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was full. The bond between us hummed, warm and golden and unbreakable. Forever, he breathed against my skin. Forever, I promised back.
Chapter 38. The Treaty of the Carrot. 3 weeks later, life had settled into a new kind of normal. Normal meant that when Quinn went to work at Pelligrino Mines, she had an enforcer named Boris standing by the water cooler, glaring at anyone who looked suspicious. Normal meant that her waiting room now contained humans with anxiety disorders sitting next to werewolves with anger management issues. Her practice had expanded. Apparently, being the queen of the Eastern Pack was great for marketing. It was 6 p.m. I was waiting for her to come home. I sat on the floor of the living room in front of the rabbit hutch. I was wearing my suit pants and a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up. I held a piece of organic kale in my hand. Dash was sitting at the entrance of his hutch, nose twitching. Eat it, I whispered to the rabbit. It is imported. It costs more than your entire lineage. Dash thumped his foot. He looked at the kale, then at my finger. Do not think about it, I warned. We have a truce, the Treaty of the Carrot. You do not bite the king, and the king does not turn you into a stew. Do we understand each other? Dash took a tentative hop forward. He sniffed the kale. Then, with a sudden snatch, he grabbed the leaf and retreated into his house to eat it aggressively. Good, I muttered. We are making progress. Interacting with the subject, a voice said from the doorway. Using positive reinforcement. Very clinical, Dr. Volkov. I jumped to my feet, brushing off my knees. My ears felt warm. Quinn was leaning against the doorframe. She had just come from the office. She was wearing her work clothes, black slacks and a simple silk blouse, but she looked more radiant than any queen in a gown. I was negotiating, I said, recovering my dignity. The beast is territorial. I am asserting dominance through resource control. You were feeding him snacks and talking to him, she corrected, walking over to kiss me. It's cute. Kings are not cute, I grumbled, wrapping my arms around her waist. We are feared. Dash fears nothing, she said, resting her head on my chest. How was your day? Productive. Stocks are up. The council is quiet. My scouts reported in from Idaho, I said, a smirk playing on my lips. Zachary is currently shoveling manure at a potato farm. He seems humble. See? She smiled. Everybody can change. I tightened my hold on her. Not everything, I whispered. Some things are constant. Like this. I pulled away gently and walked to my desk. I picked up a file. Court order number 4492. My past, I said. We walked out onto the balcony. The New York wind was cold, whipping her hair across her face, but I blocked the chill with my body. Quinn pulled a single sheet of paper from the folder, the official Certificate of Rehabilitation, and signed it with a flourish. She set it aside on the desk. That's for the board, she said. The rest is just history. I took the remaining file folder. I flicked a lighter and held the flame to the corner, watching the words anger management curl up and vanish into smoke. But as the king, I am pardoning myself, and as your husband, I am declaring a conflict of interest. I'm contemplating the irony, I said, watching the embers float away. I went to therapy to learn how to control my anger. Instead, I learned how to use it. You learn how to process it, Quinn corrected softly. There's a difference. I turned to look at her. I also learned that my therapist has a very unethical dating policy. She laughed. Hey, I waited until after the sessions were officially concluded, technically. You still owe me for the last session, she added, stepping closer. Do I? I smirked, my eyes sweeping over her. I thought I paid in car parts and Italian wine. Nope. My hourly rate is steep, she teased, sliding her arms around my neck, and I accept payment in other forms. I pulled her hips against mine. The wolf inside me purred, finally at peace. There was no more loneliness, no more cold nights in a quiet penthouse. Name your price, doctor, I growled. Just you, she whispered. Forever. I kissed her. It wasn't a tentative kiss or a desperate one. It was a promise. A seal on a treaty that would last longer than any council law. Done, I said against her lips. The Alpha King had followed his orders, and he had found his queen.
Chapter 39. The Ring-Bearer's Revenge. 6 months later, the Apex Tower was unrecognizable. The entire rooftop garden had been transformed into a spring paradise of cascading wisteria, blooming white cherry blossoms, and enough fairy lights to be visible from space. "Stop moving!" Jenna hissed, stabbing a bobby pin into my hair. "You're fidgeting like Dash on espresso." "I can't breathe," I gasped, clutching the silk of my dress. "Jenna, this corset was designed by an architect, not a tailor. It has structural supports." "It makes you look like a goddess, so hush," Jenna said, stepping back to admire her handiwork. I looked in the mirror. I barely recognized myself. The dress was custom-made by an Italian designer Rocco had threatened, politely, into taking the job. It was a mermaid silhouette in ivory silk, embroidered with delicate silver thread that looked like moonlight climbing up the fabric. The back, of course, was open, Nikolai's only request. "You look ready," Jenna whispered, tearing up. "My roommate, the Queen of the Wolves. I still can't believe you made me sign a terrifying non-disclosure agreement just so I could be your maid of honor." "It was that or a memory wipe, Jen," I teased. "I'll take the NDA. I don't want to forget this dress." "Neither can I," admitted. The door opened and Rocco Santini burst in. He was wearing a white tuxedo with a purple cummerbund and a rose the size of a cabbage on his lapel. "Dr. Q!" Rocco boomed, dabbing his eyes with a silk handkerchief. "You look beautiful, like an angel, like a fresh cannoli." "Thank you, Rocco," I smiled. "Are we ready?" "Almost," Rocco said, looking nervous. "We have a slight hostage situation with the ring-bearer." I groaned. "Dash." We walked out to the hallway. Nikolai was there, looking devastating in a black tuxedo with silk threading that matched my dress. But he wasn't looking at me. He was kneeling on the floor, glaring at a small tuxedo-clad rabbit. Dash was wearing a tiny collar with a velvet pillow attached to it. On the pillow rested 2 platinum rings. Dash was currently refusing to move, having thumped his foot and anchored himself to the carpet. "He is on strike," Nikolai growled, looking up at me. "He demands a banana. A whole one." "It's his fee," I said, walking over. Nikolai stood up. His eyes widened as he took in my dress. The air in the hallway shifted, becoming heavy and electric. "Quinn," he breathed, forgetting the rabbit entirely. "You are..." "Late," I finished, handing him a dried banana chip I had stashed in my bouquet for exactly this emergency. "Feed the beast. Let's get married." Nikolai offered the treat to Dash. The rabbit snatched it, crunched it happily, and hopped forward, signaling his readiness. The music started, a string quartet playing a hauntingly beautiful version of Can't Help Falling in Love. We walked out onto the rooftop. 300 guests stood. The High Council was there in the front row, Elder Martha nodding approvingly, Elder Vance looking like he'd swallowed a lemon. Vitali was crying openly. We walked down the aisle, the skyline of New York glittering behind us. When we reached the altar, Nikolai took my hands. His grip was warm and solid, my anchor in the storm. "Do you," the officiant, an ancient wolf shaman, intoned, "Alpha Nikolai Volkov, take this human to be your Luna, to share your breath, your blood, and your soul?" "I do," Nikolai vowed, his voice ringing out clear and strong. "I take her as my equal, my conscience, my heart." "And do you," the shaman turned to me, "Dr. Quinn Pelligrino, take this alpha? To ground him, to guide him, and to rule beside him." I looked at Nikolai. I saw the man who had torn down doors for me, the man who had learned to feed a rabbit just to make me smile. "I do," I whispered. "I take him as my partner, my patient, my love." "Then I declare you mated," the shaman announced. "Alpha and Luna." Nikolai didn't wait for the "you may kiss the bride" part. He grabbed my waist, dipped me low, and kissed me with a passion that made the crowd erupt in cheers, and a few howls. As he pulled me back up, a flash of white fur zoomed between our legs. Dash, having decided his job was done, hopped onto the train of my dress and sat there, grooming his ears. "The king and queen," Rocco yelled, popping a bottle of champagne that sprayed everywhere. "And the royal rabbit!"
Chapter 40. The Alpha's Vow. The reception was a blur of dancing, toasts, and Rocco trying to teach the High Council how to do the electric slide. But as midnight approached, I leaned into Quinn's ear. "Let's go," I whispered. "I want you to myself." We slipped away, leaving the party in full swing. We didn't take the car. We took the private elevator straight down to the master suite. The room was quiet, lit only by the city glow. I locked the door and turned to her. I began to undo the silver buttons of my jacket, my eyes never leaving hers. "Mrs. Volkov," I said, the name sounding heavy and possessive on my tongue. "Dr. Volkov," she corrected playfully, stepping out of her heels. "I kept my license." "You can keep whatever you want," I growled, crossing the room and pulling her into my arms. "As long as you keep me." I unzipped her dress, letting the heavy silk pool on the floor. I ran my hands up her bare back, tracing the spine I had once vowed to protect. "You realize what today means?" I murmured, pressing a kiss to her shoulder. "It is not just a ceremony. It is the final binding. The pack is yours. The company is yours. My life is yours." "That sounds like a lot of responsibility," she whispered, running her fingers through my hair. "I might need to raise my hourly rate." "You are priceless," I answered. I lifted her onto the bed. This wasn't like the first time, frantic and desperate. This was slow. It was a celebration. It was worship. I moved over her with a reverence that made her gasp. Every touch was a promise. Every kiss was a vow. When we finally came together, it felt like the final piece of a puzzle clicking into place. The bond between us flared bright and hot, a golden tether that would hold us together through any storm. Later, as we lay tangled in the sheets, watching the moon hang high over Central Park, She rested her head on my chest. Nikolai. What happens now? No more trials, no more court orders. What do we do? I tightened my arm around her. Now, I said, kissing the top of her head, now we build, we rule. And perhaps, in a few years, we add some pups to the pack. She laughed. Let's start with getting Dash to stop biting you first. Agreed, I chuckled. One beast at a time. I closed my eyes, listening to the steady, strong beat of her heart. I thought about the file we had burned, the fear we had conquered, the love we had fought for. The alpha had been tamed, the doctor had been wilded, and the court order? It was the best thing that had ever happened to us. Good night, my king, she whispered. Good night, my queen, I answered. And in the silence of the penthouse, surrounded by the city that was now ours, we slept. The end.